So this one is a problem I see in a ton of companies today.
Okay.
Ton of companies. And that is leaders' actions don't match their words.
Well, fancy that.
Fancy that.
I've seen it too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they'll say, hey, this is what we're going to do.
Uh-huh.
But then they don't do it.
Yeah.
Or they keep changing direction. There's a lot of that. So either they don't walk the talk, and then that feels like there's a lack of integrity there, or they're just constantly changing direction.
Yeah.
Which is a very big kind of no-no. So this kind of ties in this idea of inconsistency. And I think I've shared this piece of research on some earlier shows, but it fits into this really well. A group of researchers a few years ago studied what's the worst kind of boss to work for. I think you and I have talked about this.
I was going to ask, but you went there.
I think we've talked about it.
Yeah.
But it fits into this really well. So let's see if you can remember the answer. So they said, what's the worst kind of boss to work for? And so then they came back with the findings. What would you have thought they would have come up with? Any thoughts? Worst kind of boss?
Well, I already know the answer.
Oh, you remember it?
Probably most people would say like whatever they would classify as mean.
Yeah, so
it's probably what you would think.
I would have thought
first.
that. I totally would have thought the angry, abusive boss, like the pounding the table.
Yeah.
When I ask groups this question, they say micromanager. Sure, that's horrible.
Right.
No one wants to work with a micromanager, but that's not number one. The ghosting boss, like I can't find them.
Right.
Like they're gone. They're unresponsive. Also not number one. The boss takes all the credit for everything. The narcissistic boss, not number one. Number one is
inconsistent. Boss.
Yes, because all those other ones you can manage to.
Yeah.
They're horrible that they're a narcissist, but you know they're a narcissist. You could play to that.
Right.
You're horrible that they're a micromanager, but you know they're going to be a micromanager. So you know you just better give them a lot of detail. You can manage to all that, but you can't manage to inconsistent.
Right.
Inconsistent creates a tremendous amount of anxiety in the system. So you're sitting out in the parking lot getting ready to go into, your building to work, and you're grabbing the steering wheel, and you don't know. I could get fired today, or I could get a raise today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either of those things are equally possible.
Mm-hmm.
So this number 3 here really relates to that. So when we're really inconsistent on our what we say we're going to do and then what we do, that causes issues. So consistency matters. So consistency matters in terms of communicating regularly. It matters in terms of setting a vision and sticking to it. It also matters that, kind of what you say the values are, you stick to it. So any of those forms, when those get violated at the leadership level, it trickles all the way down, creates a toxic culture. Because it just feeds insecurity and anxiety.
Sure.
Which is not good. Just one person. Or peoples.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Can create that. So, all right. So just to recap so far, we've talked about politics trumping performance. We talked about performance trumping values. And then we talked about leaders' actions don't match their words. Okay. You ready for number 4?
Ready.
Number 4 sign that your company culture is toxic. Everything is urgent all the time.
Well, fancy that too.
Everything is urgent all the time. Now, if you're listening to this, you're probably going, this is kind of like when you do research on medical conditions, like on Google.
Or WebMD.
And
you're going to die within
and inevitably
the next 5 minutes.
you're like, I've got that,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
you're like, I've got that, and I've got that, and I've got that. I'll tell you a funny story about that in a minute.
Okay.
Well, everyone listening to this right now is probably saying, I've got that. Like, I've got urgency all the time. And there is a difference between having urgency all the time, because most of our workplaces have that, versus extreme urgency all the time. So earlier in this segment, I mentioned if you're a big company, publicly traded, you probably got a lot of change initiatives. Okay, you really should not be running more than 3 urgent change initiatives at a time. Okay, but I have seen so many cases where I had a leader that I heard speak earlier this year, and the leader announced to his group, here are our 12 initiatives that are urgent, that must be done. We're behind on all of them. I mean, they're brand new. We just started them. It's not like they're lingering and haven't been accomplished. No, we just started them, but we're already behind. We got to get them all done. And someone raised their hand in the group and they said, well, what's the priority on these? He looked at me and said, priority? They're all urgent. Get them all done now. Why would that be a bad thing? What do you think that makes you feel? Well, if you were told that, I was like, Whitney, I got 12 things and done all right now.
It does feel like you're setting your team up for failure because they just can't handle all that at once.
Yeah. Creates, again, that urgent all the time will lead to anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that just bleeds into the system. And it also reduces focus. So you're constantly in a state of anxious. You're waking up in the middle of the night thinking about work. You're not really sure what to focus on. And really not getting a whole lot done either. Big companies are really super guilty of this. And the toxicity where that's coming from is insecurity at the senior levels. Senior leadership is scared and insecure because of all the market pressure. And they're not able to take a stand. So they're just pushing it all down on everybody else.
Wow.
Very common in publicly traded companies, big ones. And if it's extreme, it's going to make it toxic. So here was the story I was going to tell you.
Okay.
So when I was getting my counseling degree, one of the classes I took was a diagnosis class. Okay, so every day we would go in the class. This was a graduate class, and we would go in and we would see, this was old school VHS tapes. So the professor would put in VHS tape.
I know what those are.
Okay. But not everyone listening knows. Hopefully they do, but they might not.
Yeah. So they don't make them anymore.
Put in the VHS tape, and then we would watch some kind of individual dealing with a diagnosis or dealing with a mental illness, and we'd have to diagnose it.
Okay.
So we'd watch it, and then she'd pause the tape, and she'd say, "What do you think's going on here?" And we'd say, "It's bipolar disorder, or it's manic depressive, which is bipolar disorder, or it's schizophrenia, or paranoid schizophrenia, which are two different things." Multiple personality disorders, which is not schizophrenia, by the way. And so there was a guy in our class, and every week he would raise his hand, and she'd say, "Yes." He'd say, "I've got that." Every week. So by the whole semester, he basically had, according to him, everything in the book.
Wow.
Yeah. He usually has to walk out of class 3 times to smoke a cigarette during the class, by the way.
Oh, okay. Wait. Do we have time, real quick? I want to take you back to this presentation you were sitting in. Unfortunately, I should probably add. Did you
where the boss said
the 12 initiatives?
Yeah.
Did you have the opportunity to speak with him after that? No.
I was not in a coaching relationship with him.
Interesting.
So, but you could see.
Did you turn in an anonymous tip?
And he was a very senior leader, so C-level leader. And then his direct reports were all like VP level, director level. I mean, these were senior people.
Yeah.
But you could see like the shoulders just drop of everybody in the room, like, oh, really? Really? They're all urgent? And he thought he was being a great leader. He's like, look, I'm making everything urgent. I'm moving everything at the same time.
Yeah.
That's not leadership. But that is a form of toxicity that is happening today.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was number 4.
That makes me feel bad for that group.
Yeah. Well,
feeling a little bit of anxiety right now.
Yeah. I mean, everything we're talking about here today, you're probably experienced, if you're listening to this, you've probably experienced this in different doses in your workplace. But if you're feeling it in extreme cases, that's forms of toxicity today in big companies.
Wow. 12 initiatives. Wow.
Yeah. Ready for number 5?
I think so.